suggest that we've got it right. It's that thing that I think where we've got is we've got a better exposure and idea of how bad things are and how much we've got to do. And I think the reality of it is we can all learn from each other. There are all the things that we're doing here, things that are done at the police here that are better than us. There is always going to be sharing. And we've got all these organisations like ECRI, like sort of the Council of Europe, like OSCE, where we've got the opportunity to sort of share examples. And the reality of it is I think this is about humanity, this isn't about the geography of one country, and I think that it's just about exposing it and exposing it to the right people. And we've had a situation that I highlighted yesterday where our politics contributed to our problems. And I think we've all got things to learn from each other. So undoubtedly Norway has, you know Norway better than I do. Mine's very superficial in the knowledge of how things go. But there is undoubtedly things that we can learn from each other.
We have a question here. Betty.
My name is Berit Vegheim. I'm coming from the Civil Rights Foundation Stop Discrimination. And I know what you have been working with in the UK for many years, and you are far beyond our work in Norway, especially with regard to disability hate crime. I would like to say to the audience that all of what Paul Giannasi has shown us now, we have examples of in Norway too, just to make that clear, and I can show it to you if you one time would like to know what examples we have got. But as in UK, disability hate crime has been treated in a different way. There are lots of cases dealt with the court, like offences to a vulnerable person or a defenseless person, and they are still sanctioned as just offences to a defenseless person, with violence against a defenseless person, never hate crime. So what I would like you to tell us, Paul Giannasi, because I know you have got so much important information. Could you tell those who are here a little bit about how did you actually get to where you are now, recognizing disability hate crime, and that vulnerability is not a contradiction to hate or hostility? How have you reached that point? Because that's why UK has had 44% increase the last year in disability hate crime. Not because it's more disability hate crime, just because they have improved their methods and understanding.
Thanks. It isn't a complete piece of work, of course, but there has been a significant increase. In 2008, where we recorded the data the first time, we recorded 800 disability hate crimes, and we've gone up now to 3,600. So significant, but then when we look at the 70,000 the survey says takes place, it's significantly short of where it should be. And I think one of the issues is about disabled people themselves and having them understand that this is not a gift that we offer to them. This is a right that they've got to be protected from targeted abuse in the same way as we all face because of our ethnicity or because of our religion. But that isn't a common message. And one of our advisors, and one of the people we work with when we're educating professionals, is a man with learning disability, a man with Down syndrome. And he is utterly fantastic. When we first started to work with him, he said that before he got involved in this work, he thought everybody got spat at the bus stop. He thought when you go upstairs on the bus, everybody moved to the centre seat and to stop you sitting next to them. And he thought that was the life that we all shared. He didn't know his life was any different. And it took some real convincing for him to realise this was a human right, and he got the same human rights as everybody else. And that's a real challenge. So if victims themselves don't see it in the context of their rights to be protected and their right to have the same life standards that we would all want to have for ourselves and our families, then that's a huge challenge. But then we've got all those other challenges around professionals. And one of the areas that we're currently working on is producing a handbook for carers and families to explain to them about what they can do and what are the signs and symptoms, particularly when you look at people like Brent Martin, who I mentioned, because whilst he was being abused by this group, he was going back to them because they were the closest thing he'd got to friends, and he wanted friendship, he wanted social interaction. So how do you tell a 19-year-old man who's been deemed to have full control over his life choices and has got every right to do what he wants, how do you steer him away from a group who you know are harming him, when actually the most interesting thing in his life is to go back to this group? And they're huge challenges for professionals. And the challenges for the police, who expect to deal with these sorts of things, it's people like social workers, it's people like educators, and it's people like health professionals. And it's a huge challenge to us, which is why we're only a limited way down. But the rights issue is for me, underpins everything. If we can just get that issue of rights in people's minds, then we'll start to address it better, I believe.
I have a question, actually. To one of the slides concerning that little boy with the chocolate cookie,
Yeah.
You said there were like 100 perpetrators
Yeah.
on the site with full name and everything. So how do you go about it? How do you investigate all 100 comments and profiles? What do you do?
So we have a policy that we don't trawl for anything. We may investigate, when we were investigating the thing I mentioned yesterday about the march, we identified offences or damaging material that we dealt with. But we as the police will never go and say, right, we've got nothing to do today, let's go and do a Google search of Muslims and find some offences. We only respond to complaints from members of the public. So in a sense, we want to make the accessibility to the public more commonly known. But we don't want to do that. We haven't got the resources in the courts and the prosecution service and the police. So we have to peel off. And what we say to offenders is, we don't tell them there's a limited chance of being caught. We give them the examples of the ones who have been caught to try and scare them away. But we've got a whole range of materials, perhaps I haven't got time to go into, but things like counter-narrative, where we as the police fund a charity to support young people, and they support, equip them and train them to challenge hate online, from the most extreme to the most prevalent. And they've got different responses and different issues, different sort of approaches to take with each different sword. But we think that that's kind of one example, and we've got this holistic view. But we wouldn't go and say, right, we've got 100 offences in here, let's dish them out and go and find them. The issue of the anonymity, particularly with Twitter, Facebook is much better at real name identity, but particularly when you go onto Twitter, we don't investigate them because Twitter will give us the IP address. We investigate the ones who are daft enough to let us know who they are. And we get lots of, I mean, fortunately, by definition, racists are stupid. And what we get is lots of them. So we have examples of somebody who's taken a real lot of effort to get this anonymous Twitter account just to attack people and just to show racist views. And then 3 years ago, they tweeted out a picture that they couldn't resist, which was them and their newborn baby. And the person was wearing a local authority work shirt on it. So it kind of brought around his downfall. And they're by and large not bright people, because racist isn't a clever thing, is it? So the ones we've prosecuted have been brought through that, or through things like football intelligence officers. So we don't go after the 100 now.
Thank you. I'm from the LBO, and we are also looking at what strategies to choose when it comes to this kind of state-funded hate crime against disabled people. And what I wonder is whether in the aftermath of this case, was there any question about legislative amendments? Because one problem is in Norway is that this kind of use or practice in the institution is illegal. We have some kind of legislation, so we have thought, okay, the problem is the culture, it's the practice itself. But now we also see that maybe the law itself gives too wide discretion to actually use force. And I wonder, how is that in Britain? Did they look at the culture? Did they look at the law? And what was kind of the consequences?
So the Department for Health carried out an inquiry and reported on the use of residential settings for care for people with learning disability. So they looked at the practice of whether it was appropriate to use places like this anyway. But I don't think there was a particular feeling that there wasn't the legislation, because they were assaults, they were criminal offences. and the police and the prosecution service dealt with them as disability hate crimes. The court enhanced the sentence because of that. So actually, I think the criminal justice system was relatively robust. The more difficult decision is what you do to protect these people from similar abuse, whether it's the abuse that we saw from Brent Martin by being ill-equipped to deal with society, or whether it's the abuse that they face by people in a care setting. So huge challenges. The solutions are much more difficult than identifying the problem. But for me, the criminal justice wasn't necessarily the thing that was wanted, or that was my view.
Thank you very much. Just on the topic of disabilities, I just wanted to share one history. During my internship, I was in a GP office where in the lunch actually, they were talking, 7 doctors talking about forcefully sterilizing people with Down syndrome. And I was kind of shocked, and I was like, am I hearing the same thing that these people are discussing? So I asked if it was right to take some sort of outer appearance and from that conduct that these people should not have children. Aren't there a lot of examples in the Norwegian media of parents that should have been parents or allowed to bear children? Isn't this a policy we don't want? And the answer I got before it just went all quiet and I just got silence back was, who do you mean now? The normal people or the ones with the Down syndrome? So I understood that this also is a matter of the whole range of the social class in Norway, not only what we would assume is dumb or evil people.
I wouldn't beat yourself up. I don't think it's Norway. I think it's society and it gets people into it.
Yes. So thank you very much. We'll now have a 10-minute break. Toilettene, I'll pass on to Norwegian if that's okay.